Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here, once again with another video on the Flash movie. So the Flash movie that is a part of the DC Cinematic Universe, or the DCU, or whatever you refer to it as, has obviously been a movie that has had its ups and, well, its massive downs. Like, if the movie had stuck to schedule in regards to its initial release date, we would have been sitting down in the cinemas with our snacks earlier this year to watch it. But of course that wasn't the case, and there has been delay after delay. However, the movie is said to be one of the next two movies in that universe to begin production, along with the Birds of Prey film. Now, the only characters we have confirmed for that movie in regards to casting are that of Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, aka The Flash, Kiersey Clemons, who will be playing Iris West, and then Billy Crudup, who is playing Henry Allen, like we saw in Justice League. Now, last year I think it was, or maybe it was this year, not too sure, seeing that time flies by, we had some plot details come out which were essentially confirmed to be true. These plot details laid out that the Flash movie would be a take on Flashpoint, but not exactly like we know from the comics. The villain in that take was going to be Dr. Light, and there were going to be Flashpoint versions of classic Flash villains, such as Captain Cold and Heatwave, with what seemed to be like no setup as to what their normal timeline versions would have been. But then again, these were just overall details of the movie, not specific to every minute of the film. So maybe at the beginning of that version of the film, the Flash could have taken on Captain Cold, Heatwave, maybe some other rogues, and then we see their Flashpoint versions later on. That would have been maybe how all of it played out. But fairly shortly after those details released, we had the news that John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, who were two of the writers on Spider-Man Homecoming, were brought in to rewrite the movie as well as direct the movie. So due to this, we were just under the assumption that the whole Flashpoint setting would be erased, and we would be getting more of a simple Flash story, maybe exploring Barry's early days as the Flash and just setting up the whole world that he's in. But, well, going by some new leaks on the current script, this might not be the case. Now, obviously, it is important to take this with a grain of salt, as they are coming from 4chan originally. I think 4chan, they seem to have made the rounds across the internet, but from what it sounds like, and from what I've been able to gather, it seems like they originated on 4chan. But then again, 4chan has been fairly spot on for script leaks and all of that in the past. There were basically the major points of Infinity War posted on there about a month before the movie came out, and even Aquaman details came out early on, months before, if not earlier, and the trailer basically confirmed some of these points. But let's jump into these details, but be sure to let me know in the comments section down below your various thoughts on this, because I'm sure some people are going to love it, some people might be in the middle, and some people are going to hate it, but let me know in the comments. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, it would be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show your support as well. Barry Allen travels back in time to prevent his mother Nora from being murdered, and awakens in an alternative timeline where he never became the Flash and Eobard Thawne rules the world. Barry meets Iris West and Jay Garrick, members of an underground resistance against Thawne, and learns that Thawne is a time traveler and they are enemies in the future. Barry reproduces the accident that gave him powers, but Thawne can drain his speed to power himself up as well. Thawne killed his mother to manipulate Barry into going back to save her and weaken the timeline, allowing Thawne to change history to conquer the world. Barry defeats Thawne after a battle throughout time and traps him in the Speed Force. Barry later meets Iris again in the fixed timeline, but she doesn't remember him until they kiss. Now, the movie will have a light tone, and this history fight is said to be one of the biggest action sequences in comic book movie history, as Barry and Thawne fight over several periods and events like World War II during D-Day. The production team is still debating whether Barry should succeed in saving his mother in the end. Casting will begin very soon, with veteran actors in their 40s to 50s eyed for the role of Eobard Thawne. Now, personally, I don't mind the sound of this. Whether these details are real or not, they actually just sound good to me. Because one of the biggest issues about doing the Flashpoint movie and making it really faithful, or just faithful in general to the plot of the comic story, is that you need those characters of Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Superman, and then I guess the Thomas Wayne Batman as well. Introducing them, along with just setting up why exactly Barry is going back in time. I don't necessarily think the comic movie would translate that well from, comic book, from the page to screen in regards to just making a consistent story. Sure, it would be epic in scale, but extremely hard to make it work. So I do like the idea of the film just taking the basic concept of Flashpoint, which is Barry going back in time and saving his mother due to what Reverse Flash did, and then create a good story around that. I think that's the best way to handle it, but let's just go over this leak in more detail. So the first part is just your standard Flashpoint story. Barry travels back in time, changes timeline, he isn't the Flash anymore. It is at this point that Barry realizes that he has stuffed up. But it's the next point where we'll probably start breaking it down. And this part is, Barry meets Iris West and Jay Garrick, members of an underground resistance against Thawne, and learns that Thawne is a time traveler and they are enemies in the future. So this is a smart way in which to have Iris West in the majority of this movie. You have to think that she will be in the introduction and be, familiar, if not very close with Barry. But I'm guessing that Iris will be the first, or at least one of the first people that Barry goes to after once, he realizes that he has stuffed up the timeline and, well, needs some help. Similar to Barry in the comic story when he goes after Batman, maybe that's how they could play this off. The addition of Jay Garrick I think is pretty cool because, well, I doubt we would see Jay Garrick in this universe in any other form. So I don't think we're going to be seeing like Jay Garrick the Speedster. So I think this is the way to like introduce him and just have him in this universe for at least one movie. You would have to think that Barry will be the main Speedster, if not the only Speedster we could hang out with in this universe, with maybe Wally West being the only other possible Speedster that we could see, exist. But the next part I want to point out is Thorne killed his mother to manipulate Barry into going back to save her and weaken the timeline, allowing Thorne to change history to conquer the world. Now I think this is a solid change up to the generic story around the killing of Nora, where essentially Reverse Flash just does it because he is Barry's greatest enemy. So the fact that Reverse Flash is a pretty big goal to achieve through killing Nora and making Barry do what he does, I think is a smart change because Earbud Thorne's a smart dude. It's pretty basic what he's done in the past. And the last thing to talk about is Barry defeats Thorne after a battle throughout time and traps him in the Speed Force. So as it later says, this fight will span across several periods and include events such as World War II during D-Day, with it potentially being one of the biggest action sequences in comic book movie history, and I can see why. It would be insane just seeing these two speedsters just fighting through time in different wars and just majorly different periods than what we're used to seeing on screen. Like, just imagine them fighting in the time of the dinosaurs or something. Like, that would be pretty crazy. And they can even do something like really meta, where they could show them traveling back in time and just have like Wonder Woman in the background fighting like the No Man's Land scene or just something random like that if they wanted to. Now, they also talk about the production team still debating whether Barry should succeed in saving his mother in the end, and I would like to think that he doesn't. Just so Barry doesn't get too much of a reward from traveling through time and messing with what has already happened. But I could just see them doing what you expect to happen, and that's Barry just stopping himself from intervening with his mother's murder, and that in itself could be a major emotional part of the film. But yeah, overall, as I said, I don't mind the sound of this. I actually like it. It's much better than that other premise around Flashpoint from the other script details. I think if you are doing Flashpoint, Reverse Flash has to be your villain. It just seems weird not having it that way when he is the reason that Barry feels the need to cause Flashpoint in the first place due to him being the one that, kills Nora Allen. But one would hope that we get, at least one or two cameos from already established characters in the universe in this movie. Possibly Cyborg and maybe even someone like Shazam, like that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, overall, I just think this sounds pretty cool and I wouldn't mind seeing this movie. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts. Do you like the idea of this story? Would you watch it? Would you enjoy it? Or would you prefer the more comic accurate one? Which, as I've said, would be epic to see or just be really hard to execute. So I think this is actually the smart route. Just use Flashpoint, the basic concept, and create a good story around that. But yeah, leave your opinions in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.